Hey, so I, 16F, recently moved out of my mom's house and have been staying with my dad. She's begging me to come back home and give her a second chance, but I really don't feel like doing that. The reason for that is her family, my stepdad Rick, and stepbrother Liam, 16M. My parents got divorced 7 years ago and she started dating Rick about 3 years back. After being together for 1 year, Rick and Liam moved in with us, and my mom got married to Rick about 8 months ago. Living with these people has been a challenge because Rick and Liam don't really care about me and they try to avoid me as much as they can, and the same goes for me. But ever since they moved in, my mother has also become quite distant and spends most of her time with them and doesn't seem to care about me. It used to bother me a lot because even though she and my father have shared custody of me, I spend most of my time staying with her. In the initial years after their divorce, I used to divide my time equally between the two of them and go back and forth, but then, 4 years ago, my dad struck gold at his company and received a huge promotion. It meant more responsibilities, much higher pay than what he used to receive, basically the work. But it also meant having to move away from his work. He also became a lot busier because of his responsibilities and I did not feel bad about that, but I do have to admit that I did miss seeing him more frequently because after that happened, we had to adjust the custody arrangement accordingly as well. I had school and stuff, and I couldn't afford to see him as frequently as I used to because I would require a lot more travel. So I started staying with my mother throughout the week, and for a couple of weekends in the month, my dad would arrange for me to come to see him or visit me himself. It was tedious and exhausting for both of us, but we had managed to stick to it so far. I was planning on moving in with him after I graduated high school because honestly, after my mom got remarried, I had no interest in living with her anymore since it felt like she didn't care for me and her priorities had changed. I had tried to talk about it to her a couple of times, but every time, she had just reassured me that I was still a priority for her and that her relationship with Rick and Liam was not going to change anything between us since I was her flesh and blood after all. But then, what happened recently, really showed me that also reassurances that she had been feeding me were just words and she didn't actually mean any of that. Recently, I found out that Liam had been stealing my very expensive makeup and a couple of my shoes so that he could give them to his girlfriend as presents. He and I used to go to the same middle school together and now, we are in the same high school together as well. That's actually how my mom met his dad since they're both single parents and happened to run into each other at some school event. I know for a fact that Liam has been dating one of the girls from our year since middle school, and because we are in the same year, I follow her on social media as well. A couple of weeks ago, I had this pair of really expensive sneakers go missing and I had no idea where they were until I saw his girlfriend wearing it in one of her posts. This is not even the first time that something of mine has gone missing because, as I had mentioned earlier, even a couple of my makeup items and other pairs of shoes were also nowhere to be found. They were expensive as well because they were my dad's gifts to me and I really cherished them and kept them carefully, so I knew that somebody in the house was doing this. I had even complained to my mother about it, and she had fired the housekeeper over this, but even after that, things continued to go missing and eventually she just told me that it must have been me who had misplaced these things. But when I saw that girl wearing those sneakers in her post, I decided to ask her if she had been receiving more gifts than usual from Liam. This girl and I are not friends, we are not even close and we don't really speak to each other, but this seemed like an emergency, so I decided to reach out to her without caring about how weird it would seem. Surprisingly, she did reply to me and told me that she had ended up receiving a lot more gifts from Liam than usual in the past couple of weeks. They were mostly just makeup items and shoes, and they were really expensive ones too, so she was really happy. I don't know why that girl hadn't thought to question how exactly he was able to afford any of this, but when I found out from her that it had indeed been stealing my stuff and giving it to his girlfriend, I lost it, and I ended up telling her that all these things were originally mine, and he had basically been stealing my stuff so he could impress her with these gifts. She did see that message, but she did not reply after that. And I don't really care if she replies or not because that's literally the last thing on my mind. Because after that conversation with her, I decided to take it up with Liam and showed him the screenshots of our chats and asked him why would he start stealing my things, especially personal items like makeup. At first, he tried to deny everything and told me that he had been saving up his pocket money to buy her these things, but I was not a fool. Both of us get the same amount of pocket money from our respective parents and it's not enough to even cover half of the price of the shoes. However, when I brought it up with our parents that day, they had a very weird reaction that I did not understand. Instead of reprimanding him, his dad actually started to come out in support of him. His father actually defended him and turned the entire thing on me by saying that it was my fault for constantly showing off how expensive the presents that my dad got for me were. It was natural for Liam to feel weird about it, and since he couldn't exactly use the makeup and choose for himself, he decided to try and impress his girlfriend with it. It might have been an immature decision on his part, but Rick claimed that he could totally understand where it was coming from. It was just a really stupid defense because honestly, I don't show off the presents that my dad gets for me because I didn't think that they would even care. And the way Rick tried to defend Liam, I honestly thought that was a projection of what he felt, because I guess he was insecure that he couldn't afford the same kind of expensive gifts for his son and felt bad that my father, his wife's ex-husband, was in a position where he could afford to buy me such expensive things on a regular basis. And I guess that's why he tried to turn the entire thing on me, but I was not going to let him make me feel like I was the one at fault, and this was totally normal because I knew for a fact that it wasn't. My mom was in the room as well throughout, but she refused to comment on anything, and it was just me fighting against Rick and Liam on my own. I even turned to her and asked her to help me out here because it felt like Rick was just refusing to see my point on purpose, because that would require him to acknowledge the fact that his son had messed up. But my mom refused to weigh in, and instead, she just told me that she could understand that I was having problems with Liam, but there was no need for me to come and act like a tattletale to get him into trouble. She then told me that this was between me and my brother and that I needed to deal with it without getting them involved. That put an end to the entire argument, and Liam went to his room and our parents went to theirs while I kept freaking out at all of them. But there was nobody there to even hear me out because that's how little they cared. It was incredibly frustrating because even though Liam had admitted to the fact that he had been taking my things, there was literally no punishment for him. In fact, Rick had come to his rescue and my mother had refused to even say a word against that. I felt so hopeless and let down after that incident. I decided that I was going to stay with my father, even if it required me to drop out of high school. I packed my things that night to the best of my abilities and sneaked out of the house really late at night, when I knew that everyone would be sleeping. Lucky for me, I had a friend whose older sister had a car and the two of them drove me to my dad's house. We arrived about 4 hours after we had left, at around 6 in the morning, and my dad was really surprised to see us there so early, but he invited us all in, and then I explained everything that had happened, which had led me to come stay with him so abruptly. He already knew for a fact that I had been feeling neglected while staying with my mom, but had been motivating me to just fight it out for a couple of years more, because after that, I would have graduated high school and I wouldn't have to worry about where I stayed. But after hearing me out, he told me that he would arrange something for me because it was clear that I just couldn't live with him anymore. And honestly, I felt the same way. I just couldn't live with these people, so I was glad to have him on my side. My friend and her sister drove back home the next day, and my friend has told everybody in school that I have mono, which is why I wouldn't be attending school for the next couple of weeks until I recover, and it'll be easy enough to get a medical certificate to have my absence excused, so I'm not worried about that. What I'm actually worried about is my mother, because the day after I left home, when she discovered that I was not there, she called me up and started texting me about where I was, and she hasn't stopped apologizing to me since then. I really hate the fact that I'm having to break her heart, because it's been 1 week since I left home and she just keeps begging me to come back home, but I really don't feel like I want to. It's become a moral dilemma for me because I also just found out about a couple of more things from my father that I did not know earlier, and that has made things significantly more complicated for me. For instance, my dad was really upset that my mom had been treating me like this and had been talking about a lot of things, and that's how I found out that he had been paying a massive amount of child support ever since he received his promotion and had to move away. After he received his promotion, my mother demanded 20% of his income as child support because she thought it was only fair, since I would be spending most of my time with her and would only be seeing him on the weekends. Before his promotion, since they had similar income and shared custody, my dad didn't have to pay any child support, but after that, he agreed to my mom's demand because he thought that it was fair as well. Since now, he had a significantly higher income and it was true that she would be taking care of me for most of the time. After that, he had his suspicions that maybe the money wasn't going into taking care of me, and he had even spoken to my mother about it several times, but she had always reassured him that she was putting aside the money for my future and eventually, that money would make its way back to me. He had just taken her word for it because he did not want to create drama, but after hearing what I had to say about the time that I spent at my mom's place, he wasn't so sure that she was being truthful with him. In fact, he had his fair reasons to doubt her because he did follow her on social media and he had seen that she had made a couple of expensive purchases in the past, and I could vouch for it. In the past couple of years, my mom had been very clever about her splurges, making sure to space them out so that nobody could suspect her of misusing the child support. In the past couple of years, she had bought quite a lot of expensive jewelry, clothes, and accessories for herself. She had also bought really expensive gifts for Rick and Liam in the past, and occasionally, for me as well, but most of the time she would just skip buying stuff for me because my dad was already getting me expensive gifts and she didn't want to spoil me more. Rick and my mom are both middle management at best, so I did find it a tad bit weird that she had suddenly started to be able to afford to splurge on herself, but I just figured that it must have been coming from her savings, and never did I ever even imagine that she had been taking child support from my dad. So now, I guess you guys can understand why it's such a dilemma for me, because even if I had any intention of forgiving her eventually and accepting her apologies, I can't take it seriously now because I honestly don't know if she really wants me back or if she wants the child support. Because according to the arrangement, my dad had agreed to pay child support until I turned 18. And most importantly, in the past couple of years, every time I had brought up how she had been neglecting me, she had always maintained that she was taking care of me while my dad was too busy with work and she had a lot of responsibilities, like working hard to be able to afford raising me and even responsibilities towards her new husband and son, which is why I might have felt neglected. But the truth was that she was just trying to be there for everyone, and as her daughter, I needed to be more understanding. Now that I know that she had been taking child support from my dad, all of that just feels like gaslighting because she did not want me to feel like I was actually being neglected. Since then, I would complain about it to my dad or worse, leave her, and then she would lose my custody as well as the child support checks. She obviously did not need to work very hard to be able to afford raising me all the kind of lifestyles that she wanted at all, because 20% of my dad's income is a lot, and I feel cheated that she had been feeding me so much BS for the past couple of years. And at the same time, I also feel kind of bad for her because regardless of everything, she is still my mom, and I feel like I'm getting really confused about what to do. I wanted to do the right thing for myself, but I also don't want to hurt my mother in a way that I cannot take back. I just don't know what to think anymore, and on top of that, my mom just keeps apologizing and telling me to come back. She's pretty much just begging me at this point, even though I haven't been responding to her. I also have to think about how I want to finish high school, because if I start living with my dad, I won't be able to go to the same school since the commute will be too much for me. So there are a lot of things to factor in here, but mostly, I just genuinely want to know if I'll be doing the right thing by moving in with my dad and letting my mom go from my life. Ida for wanting to leave my mom and her new family behind and move in with my dad instead. Update 1. Hey, so I would just like to say to everyone who had been saying that my dad is an absentee father and stuff, that's really not true. He's always been there for me emotionally, he just has to work really hard as well to give me the kind of future that I want. And I really don't mind, to be honest. In fact, he had even offered for me to come along with him when he initially had to move, but at the time, I was way too attached to my life here to consider moving with him. I did not want to leave my mom, my school and my friends behind, and I chose to stay here, so he had to make the best of the situation as well. Even recently, when I had been complaining to him about being neglected by my mom, he had offered for me to come stay with him, but when he realized that I didn't want to leave my school and my friends, that's when he started motivating me to stay with my mom instead, because he just wanted to be there for me. At no point have I ever felt neglected by him or that he doesn't want me around, so I just wanted to get that out of the way, since I didn't want anybody thinking badly of him. And honestly, one of the biggest reasons why I had continued to stay with my mom was because before the divorce, we had had a fairly normal relationship like any mother and daughter do. It was only after she started dating Rick that she started to change and her priorities became different. For the past couple of years, I've been torn between choosing what is comfortable for me, which is staying with my mom and living the life that I've always known, or doing what's right for me, moving in with my dad and starting over. But now that it's been a couple of days since I made my post here and I've gone through the comments, spoken to a couple of people, I feel like I have some clarity on what I really want to do and what I should do. In fact, this is something that I should have done a long time back, but yeah, I'm gonna move in with my dad on a permanent basis. I had to think about it for a really long time, and I spoke about it with my closest friends at length, and they all agreed that this is the best way for me to go right now. All of them are going to miss me and I'm gonna miss them, but that's no reason for me to keep compromising and putting up with life at my mom's place, since it's become very clear to me that her priorities are Rick and Liam and not me. It was honestly a tough call because I've known these people my entire life. My friends and I have been together since kindergarten, and that's why I was so attached to them. But at some point, I was gonna have to leave anyway, because we can't all stay together forever, and honestly, at this point, wanting to stay in a place where I'm clearly not wanted just so that I can be close to my friends seems childish and stupid. I needed to choose what was best for me, and so, that's what I did. Luckily, I have very understanding and supportive friends, and they pushed me to do the right thing. I should have known that they were always going to want this for me, even if it came at the cost of having me move away from them, because I can't imagine anybody else helping me sneak out of my house and make a run for it, and then even drive me to my destination for 4 hours in the middle of the night. I'm truly grateful that I have such wonderful friends, but now, I'm gonna have to start again. I have spoken to my dad about it, and he's already in the talks with his lawyer. It's bound to be a relatively straightforward process, because since I am 16 now, I can decide who I want to live with. And if I don't even stay with my mom, there's no child support to be paid. She's already not gonna be getting any alimony since she is married again, so basically her funds are getting cut off. After she finds out about that, then I'm gonna get to know if she really just wants me back, or if it's the money that was the motivating factor behind her constantly texting me and apologizing to me, begging me to come back. She doesn't know any of it yet, since my dad is still speaking to his lawyer and the arrangements are being made and stuff. But she's going to find out in a couple of days, and well, let's just see how she reacts to that. On the basis of her reaction, I'm gonna decide if I want to stay in touch with her or if I want her out of my life completely. Until then, I'm going to continue ignoring all her messages and phone calls because I really don't have anything to say to her right now. Especially after the incident after which I had to leave, because now that I think about it, she should have supported me. Given the fact that I was not even wrong in that situation to be upset with Liam since he literally had been stealing from me, I don't understand why it was such a moral and ethical dilemma for her. I mean, Rick decided to defend his kid even when he was wrong and everyone knew it, but my mom couldn't even stand up for myself knowing I was right. The more I think about it, the more upset I feel that Liam and Rick's feelings were more of a priority for her than me. Anyway, what's done is done. Update 2. Hey, so a couple of days ago, my mom finally found out from my dad and his lawyer that I had decided that I was going to stay with my dad and she was not going to be receiving child support anymore. My dad and his lawyer had filed a petition to get primary custody of me, but my mom will still retain her visitation rights. She could contest it, but it would be kind of pointless because now that I'm 16, who I decide to live with carries more weight. So it was not surprising that she did not protest any of this. She only decided to stop texting or calling me. I had kind of seen this coming because now that she knew that she was not going to be getting any money from my dad anymore, there was no point in trying to get me back. No child support, no me. That's how it was, I guess. I won't lie, it was really upsetting for me to realize that the only reason she had wanted me around for the past couple of years after she met Rick was because she wanted the money. But anyway, at least I found out where I stood with her, and now I can make my decision about whether I want her in my life. And the answer is, I don't. I don't think I'll be reaching out to her ever again, and I'm glad that I'm moving away. I'm still gonna try and go back occasionally so that I can meet my friends, but apart from that, I have nothing left there anymore. My maternal grandparents live in Greece and I mostly just speak to them on the internet or on phone calls, and they recently found out about whatever had been going on. We are not particularly close, but even then, they had a lot of sympathy for me and acknowledged the fact that what my mom was doing was really wrong. But well, I don't think she cares. Anyway, it's really depressing to talk about that, so I'll move on to something funnier. I recently found out from a couple of friends that a couple of days ago, Liam had a very public fight with his girlfriend, or rather ex-girlfriend, in the cafeteria, and it was humiliating for him. Apparently, she had been ignoring him and had blocked him everywhere after I revealed to her that he had basically been stealing my things so he could give it to her as gifts. And he had been trying to get her to talk to him because they have been together for quite some time. Everyone had found it very weird that they were not on speaking terms anymore, and he kept trying to get her to talk to him, especially when they used to be so close, but nobody knew the reason why because I had left. And my friends were not the kind of people who would gossip about stuff like this. But things came out in the funniest way because a couple of days back, while he was trying to get her to talk to him in the cafeteria, she had an outburst and started screaming about what he had done. She totally humiliated him in front of everyone by revealing how disgusting it was of him to be stealing stuff from me, and pretending that he had purchased it all for her with his own money. And since then, he has pretty much become the laughing stock of the school. I guess it's just karma because Rick totally defended him, but however, I know that our school is not going to be so gentle and forgive him. Anyway, he had it coming, and I'm glad that this happened. I'm a bit sad that I wasn't there to witness all this in person, but well, you can't have everything, I guess. Update 3. Hey, so it's been a little over 2 months since I left home and everything is slowly falling into place. I've been very busy for the past couple of weeks because I had to start at a new school here and most of my credits were transferred. But I'm still gonna have to work really hard to catch up because I joined in the middle of the term. I know I'm gonna be able to make it though, so I'm not very stressed. I've already started making new friends, though, so that's nice. People are not that bad here, and honestly, it's pretty much just like my old high school. I do miss my old friends, quite a lot actually. I've been back home with my dad a couple of times now because there was a lot of paperwork to be done since I'm moving schools, and also because we need to collect everything that I hadn't been able to pack when I was leaving. I met my mother when I went back home and she was very cold to me. She pretended like she wasn't even interested in looking at me, but I didn't let that bother me too much. Liam and Rick were much funnier to deal with because they just kept glaring at me and my dad, and it almost felt like they were going to start yelling at us, but had to control themselves somehow. I'm sure Liam is not very happy about the fact that he was publicly humiliated because I told his girlfriend the truth about all the gifts that she had been receiving. But well, he probably shouldn't have been a thief if he didn't want to get exposed as a thief. Anyway, I'm settling in well in my new life and I'm much happier here with my dad. He's quite busy with work most of the time, but when he is sitting down with me, all his time is completely for me and I never feel neglected here. It's a nice change of pace from what I was used to for the last couple of years. Looking back, I think I made the right choice.